Hi guys. Just waiting for our co-host. Happy Valentine's Day. Just waiting for our co-host, for anybody who is watching. Do me a favor and go ahead and hashtag live if you're watching live with us today, and hashtag replay if you're watching this later. All the comments help us stay relevant. If you're not following us, please do so. Hi.
I think we're on.
We
I think we're here.
are on. Yay. Welcome, welcome. So as everybody knows, we are working on planning a Texas Hill Country wedding series. So my name is Cherie. For those of you who don't know, I'm with Messina Inn in Wimberley, Texas. I have been in the hospitality business for over 10 years, and I am a certified wedding coordinator and have been a venue manager and property manager at Messina Inn since we opened in 2017. We are doing this series over the next couple of weeks, so please join us each week to learn different tips. Today we have Stephanie with Sweet Gardenia Weddings joining us to get the scoop on how to pick a planner. So welcome, Stephanie. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. So my name is Stephanie. I'm the owner of Sweet Gardenia Weddings. I am a planner, designer, coordinator, chaos coordinator. And I've been doing that for 6 years now. And I just love what I do. I can't imagine doing anything different.
Well, welcome. Just for those of us that are tracking budget, the average wedding in Texas is $30,000, and for a planner, we have budgeted $1,800, which is the average starting cost of equipment.
Right.
So just if you're trying to, plan out with budget, that should help. So today our goal is to kind of teach you about how to plan, how to pick your planner. Of course, almost everybody in the wedding industry thinks you should get a planner.
Yes.
So there are two different types of planner, or two different types of planners, right? There's planners and then there's coordinators. And so Stephanie's going to kind of share with us today on determining what you're looking for and the differences.
Yes. So when I am in front of a couple and they are deciding between having a wedding coordinator or hiring a wedding planner, I'm always asking, how much work are you willing to put in yourself? So if you are completely fine with doing your own scheduling, facilitating your own booking, signing contracts, payment schedules, all that jazz, then you might need just a wedding coordinator. But if you are busy, if you are planning something else in your life, like a move, a change of job, a you know, an opportunity that came your way, like school or something, it's usually worth it to hire a wedding planner who can take over all of those duties, payment schedules, timelines, budgeting, and making sure that everything is being facilitated in a way that's professional, but also super helpful when you're going through a big life event such as the one I named earlier. And so I really recommend just kind of assessing, right, what you are able to do on yourself, by yourself, and how good are you about getting all the things done on your to-do list. Sometimes it's just worth it to get all that stuff done yourself and hand it over like a baton to your coordinator, who is going to take it over from there.
Yeah. Some of my brides are totally checklist brides, and they are a little bit of the on the control side, which is great. And they might be better just with a coordinator. But other times, some of my brides, they don't want all that. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't want to know what they're doing. They've got other things on their plate. So yeah, that's great. Just to simplify that and explain that a little bit too, is that for me, what I would say is that a planner is somebody who helps from day one with coordinating and
Right.
helping you with vendors and your design and seating charts and just all the things, right? And then a coordinator is somebody who basically helps you develop your timeline and execute that, and that's it.
Right. It's mainly about working with who you already booked once you're at a coordinator. If you have a planner, then we're helping you out with design, with budgeting, with timeline, with floor plans, all that jazz from the very beginning, so you're not kind of reinventing the wheel, so to say.
Yeah. And just to be clear, planners still execute the timeline and help with the timeline, but they just do so much more.
Right. They just do so much more than just the timeline, right? When you're a coordinator, that is a big one, which is when you're a planner, that's a part of it, but right, it's another facet of all the things that we help do for you.
Yeah. So that should be your first step in trying to decide is what type are you looking for? So are you looking for a planner or are you looking for a coordinator?
Yes.
Then we can move on to packages. So there is 3 predominant packages that we see in the industry. And so Stephanie's going to talk about those.
Yes. So I like to describe it being a partial planning services where you're just kind of needing the basics, but you get everything planned for you, including the scheduling, the payment trackers, the budget. But if you are interested in something like full service that comes with your design aspect, not a lot of coordinators do planning and design, which is a whole another spiel too. You've got things like textures, colors, flowers, linens, down to the venue and all of the fun stuff that go in between just getting things done and making things aesthetically pleasing, having some help with somebody to help you figure out what kind of colors you wanting to put together, what kind of aesthetic are you going for, the style, but also paying attention to the budget and the overall feel and vision of the day. So that's something that is kind of up to the couple, right? If they want help with design, then maybe a full service wedding planner would be best. If you have already your design in mind, you just kind of need the basics, you need a rundown of A to Z, then partial planning would help you too. That's the main difference from mine. A lot of people have different things that they do for partial and full service.
Yeah, so just like we've talked about before, in packages, a lot of times you're not comparing apples to apples. So because each planner customizes what they're offering and what their a lot of times it's like what their talents are, what their strong suits are. So you're going to find that different packages are going to offer different things based on that. And I just was going to add that, you know, some people are really visual people and some people are not. And so having that design aspect can be very helpful. Also, I once had a bride that, like, she had her theme picked out and she had all of these elements, but she just didn't know how to pull it all together.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's another factor. And then one thing that I think we see a lot too is just going to be month of coordination services.
Yes, month of coordination services. So in the industry, we see when people don't have a wedding coordinator that a lot of different vendors have to wear that hat. They have to go the extra mile to ensure that a lot of things in the timeline are happening. Right. So for example, when they don't have a coordinator, they all have to kind of work together to cue dances, dinner, toast, speeches, all of that stuff. They're kind of guessing, right? Doing the guesswork on how to get that done. And yes, we usually have a timeline, but it's much more harder for your vendors, for your photographer, for your DJ to cue speeches when they've got their own job to do. So wedding industry created the wedding coordinator. And so what we are doing is we're facilitating that day, running the schedule, and we also help with like final venue walkthroughs to create the floor plan, to decide where everything's going to go, where people are going to go, but also to run like your wedding rehearsal if you have one, and then your wedding day timeline from the very beginning to the very end. A lot of the times I hear that, oh, the coordinator leaves right after the first dance, which is something that you probably don't want because then that means that the rest of your timeline is just going to be up to whenever. And if you have a package with your photographer and they are there from this point to this point, you've got to make sure everything you want is photographed in that day. And not everybody's going to pay attention to that. So wedding coordinators help with that, with just facilitating the timeline, but also helping you get everything that you want to get done and photographed as well.
Yeah. So, you know, if you don't have a coordinator, for example, that just reminded me, you know, if your coordinator has left or you don't have one, then what can happen is like your photographer has to stop snapping all these great photos of you hanging out with your friends and family to go find the DJ and tell him that it's time to do XYZ. And then, you know, or the DJ might catch that, oh, it's about that time to cut the cake. Now he's got to leave the DJ stand, you know, to go locate the photographer and the bride in the room and all the things.
Make sure that mom is
you know, he can take his mic and he can put the music on, but he's not back there. So if something happens in that meantime, you know, he's not there. So, but I mean, he's not behind his
right
equipment. So anyway, so those are just some kind of examples. Another thing with packages is just making sure that you're really, it's with packages, but it's also with contracts, making sure that all the things that you need, if you need somebody to decorate, make sure that's included, and to what extent, you know. Don't ever just tell your coordinator, I just want the staircase decorated. Show her examples of what you want, you know. And then just in general, making sure that all the things that you need help with, if you know, decorating is something you need, if cleanup is something you need, if seating chart help is something you need, making sure that those are either done by the coordinator or she can hire somebody to take care of those for you, so that you have all the things you need. Because yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. It's kind of like packages. It's not apples to apples. And so sometimes you're not getting everything you needed. So you already kind of mentioned one of the do's and don'ts that we talked about, which was, you know, making sure that your coordinator is there from beginning till end. You know, I think that coordinators should start at 10 hours of time at the venue. You don't want your tables and chairs to be set up and there was a last minute tweak that nobody told the venue and they're having to change it 2 hours before ceremony, you know, or before the event. So, you know, I recommend a minimum of 10 hours, but just in general, like they need to be there from start to finish. Also, if you're getting your hair and makeup done, sometimes it's hard to track down those bridesmaids. And the last thing you want to be doing as the bride is stressing over, well, it's time for so-and-so to get their hair and makeup done and they're not here. That's something your coordinator could help you with. So.
Oh yeah. And then, you know, not only just make sure that they're there from beginning to end, but that they are going to actually run your timeline. A lot of times I hear, well, we had a coordinator, but we don't know where they were, or they left and they never came back until the very end. And so it's just important to be like, okay, so are you staying? Do you have a team? If you are staying, you know, are you going to run my timeline?
Yeah.
Here's some crazy things.
I think that as pros, right? So I'm not trying to knock anybody down, but there is definitely a difference as we've been in the industry as long as we have, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody wants to be in the wedding industry, you know? I mean, not everybody, because some people think we're crazy, but
Right.
there's a lot of people that want to be in the wedding industry. And they when they first start out, they just really don't grasp it all the way. They think they've got it, but they just don't. And so just making sure that your contract is ironclad and all the details are lined out. You don't want anything to be vague. Anytime I see I'm reviewing a vague contract, I get very concerned.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Very much so. If your contracts don't have dates, they don't have times, if they don't have 2 signatures, sometimes it's okay with just one, but and then also, you know, I would love to see like what time they're going to be arriving, how much time they need for setup, all these things that could go on. Contracts could be another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, another meeting.
Right. Yeah. So another thing that I think we hear a lot of is going to be family members or church coordinators. So a family member who might have done a couple weddings and they want to, you know, help you along the way. Or I've also seen, well, like, you know, I have a friend who she does all the church coordination at her church. And so we're just going to use her. And so I have my concerns about that with the church in particular. I don't know how much you've seen that, Stephanie, but with the church, it's like when you're a coordinator at one specific place, it is a completely completely different ball game going to another location and working with vendors that you're not familiar with, spaces that you're not familiar with, and all of that. So,
yes, very true.
And you had more concerns about family members being coordinators, and so please share.
Oh, yeah. So when, I always hear that, oh, my aunt's going to coordinate my wedding. We're going to be okay there. We've got that covered. And, from my point of view, I know how the work that I do, right? I know the standard for wedding coordinators. I know what DJs need to be successful. I know what the photography needs. I know what catering needs to be successful, but not the average person would know these things.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, there are things that coordinators do in the timeline that are relied upon by these vendors. Queuing dinner, opening the buffet, standing up and making sure all vendors get fed. And I really don't see your aunt doing that. I really don't see your mom enjoying her night, your maid of honor enjoying her night doing that. And not only that, there's just things that they can't do. So if your maid of honor is going to be your wedding coordinator, how is she going to send you down the aisle? How is the doors going to open? How is she going to fluff your dress and make sure you get down the aisle? She's already going to be seated, right? And the same thing for your mom or your aunt. It's just not fair for them to be put to work on that day, even though maybe they want to help. It's just out of their league when you're talking about the need for a coordinator and what exactly we do.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that
family members, not that great.
Right. That reminded me of actually very early on in my career of weddings. My aunt was getting married, and so she was like, "Can you be my coordinator?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." And she's like, "Oh, and I want you to be in the wedding." And I was like, "Okay, fine." I will never do it again. I love you all, and I want to coordinate for you, but I will never do it again. In fact, I was asked after that to be somebody's maid of honor, and I said, "You have to choose. I can be your maid of honor, or I can be your coordinator, but I can't be both." And this is why when I left to go get in my dress, nobody knew what still needed to be done but me. And I had no more time to do what I needed to do. I had helpers, but when you just try to explain things to people, if they haven't seen the visual, they can't grasp it. And so, certain things didn't get done. And I mean, I wasn't there to fluff her dress because I was already down the aisle. So, it sounded great in theory, and I lived and I learned. I will never do it again. I love my friends and family, and I wish I could be there, do both, but you have to choose because you can't do it all, especially if they're in the wedding, but also just, and that was somebody who I had experience. I knew what I was doing, but I had other responsibilities too, so.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. I mean, they want to enjoy the day too,
Right.
It was a blur. It went by so fast. And, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. So another thing you mentioned was if they have a team, but one of the things that I want to talk about is being insured. So making sure they have a team is very important because one person cannot do it all. But being insured, it not only means that they are legit, right? They're not somebody who just decided yesterday that they want to do this, but it also comes with other factors. So.
Yeah, so being insured is kind of like a good way to draw the line. Just hearing about planners who are uninsured. One of them, I think she hung a wedding dress on the fire alarm or something, and it went off and everything got wet in the bridal suite. And so, you know, the day was ruined. She couldn't even wear her dress. It got all wet. The makeup, the hair was ruined. It just seemed like that was the worst thing she could possibly done. And then when it came back that she didn't have insurance, it was more like a learning um for everybody, you know, like, hey, you know, this planner didn't have insurance, even though she was so close to the, you know, the wedding couple. You know, she didn't insure herself. She didn't make sure that she had um you know, insurance to protect her if something went wrong, and something did. So it's one of those things where you know, it can mean the difference of having a wedding professional or just somebody who's doing this as a hobby, as a side gig, as something on the side. And technically that's a lot of vendors, but we won't go to get into that.
Right. um, Another thing that you mentioned to me was making sure that the reviews are consistent. And if there's probably, I would say even more than one, what do you think? One bad one?
Yeah, you know, reviews are something that keep me up at night.
Mm-hmm.
I read a lot of them, either from different vendors or from somebody in my industry. And I think, you know, it's all how you start, really. Um, you have to really maintain your clients' expectations, find out what those are, and either be honest and let them know that you can't meet them or you can. Um, to me, it is a little alarming when I see, you know, a review, really, really good reviews, and then like the latest one had like a bad one. It is alarming. It's like, oh no, you know, did something happen within their management? Did something happen in their company that changed, right? It's a little alarming for that. I know me, we've got 5-star reviews all across the board, but I do lose sleep at night thinking, oh my goodness, you know, did I do everything? And of course, I know that I do. But having a consistent, steady flow of reviews on Zola, on Facebook, on WeddingWire, The Knot, Google, you're going to find consistency there when you're working with them. It just goes hand in hand. To be on like WeddingWire and The Knot, you have to pay money, and and you know, that's just another way that you see that they're invested in this and they're passionate about what they do because they're on these sites, and it makes sense that, you know, they're going to give consistent results to you as well.
Yeah. So reviews are something that are very tough in today's world. So while we're talking about reviews, I will say that there are clients that you just can't make happy. So, you know, make sure that when you are reading a review, like when we say a bad review, we don't mean this person was just being nitpicky. Like they are literally giving examples of why they are leaving the review that they are leaving.
Yeah.
Some people will be vague or just say it was a terrible experience, but not explain why and things like that. And so just keep that in mind. So when we say a bad review, we don't just mean they gave them 3 stars with no explanation or 1 star with no explanation.
Yeah. Like those lengthy ones that you got to spend some time scrolling and reading.
Right. Yeah. So, um, so one of the things that we kind of talked about was deciphering between, you know, whether you need a planner or a coordinator. We also talked about the 3 levels of packages that are typically seen. And we've talked about some do's and don'ts. When selecting your planner, what are 2 things that you think are the key factors?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to just pick two. When you're selecting a planner, I'm guessing having the biggest connection is super important. Sometimes I've, I've got brides who just are in a big ball of stress, right? And knowing that y'all are vibing, that y'all trust each other is so important. And my brides write in their reviews how, they were stressed and how anxious they were, but, how refreshing and how happy they were just to have us on their team. It's super important that not only do you trust them, that you have a connection, and, things happen on wedding day, on things that like mishaps or surprises or happy moments, and having that connection is just super important. I think I told you that I feel like an honorary family member for the day, and you've got to think about that too, is that this person will be around your family, your friends, and not only do they need to have a good connection with you, but being able to maintain that level of respect and appreciation for your guests as well.
Yeah.
But also, like how hands-on, are your planning needs? I guess when you're figuring out who to hire, a lot of the times I hear that, oh, we had a phone call with a different planning company, but they let us know that there's 8 planners on their team, and we're just going to get in contact with one. And that kind of, to me, seems like it's a good business practice for them, but maybe connecting with your planner right away would be the best bet. So if, you just got to make a decision on that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, so two things in regards to that. One is that the two vendors that you're probably going to spend the most time with that day are going to be your photographer and your coordinator. So making sure that you jive with those people and trust those people and comfortable with those people. I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the things that you wouldn't think of, like, I don't know how many times I've bustled somebody's dress. That means I'm literally like touching their rear end. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want somebody you're not comfortable with doing that. So,
Oh yeah.
or you're in your bra when they come in to help you. I had to lace up somebody's dress, and literally she's just in her bra and panties,
Right.
So
Right. You gotta have a level of trust.
You have to have a little level of comfort with them. And the fact that they're with you for so much time during that day, you want all your friends and family and yourself to be comfortable with them.
Yeah.
And then in regards to having the whole team of coordinators, right? Mm-hmm. So that is very common, and I really hadn't thought about this, but it's kind of, there are a couple different businesses that are like that in this industry, where you're not hiring this sole person, you're hiring their company.
Yeah.
And so there is great aspects of that. One of the things that I think is great about that is that you will see consistency in their work, because they have guidelines, mm-hmm. That they have to follow. And that, if somebody gets sick, they're not scrambling. They can hire, they can just bring in another partner who's going to have the same consistencies from them. But the other side of it is if you're really clicking with somebody, you may not have them that day. I've seen that happen time and time again with DJs in particular. They really loved this DJ at this event, and then they hired that company, and it wasn't that specific DJ.
Yeah.
So,
I did it too.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that DJ did a bad job. It's just being aware of that. And there is great things about it, but there's also things to consider in that nature. And I work with a company that is a DJ like that they hire lots of DJs, and they have a whole team. And the great thing is I never have to worry. I can always know that they're going to be there, and there's not going to be any issues, and they're going to have the same lighting that they should have and the same sound system that they should have, and I don't have to worry. And I've been really fortunate that I've not had anything but maybe a minor hiccup here and there,
Yeah.
But because you do see those horror stories, My photographer called and she's out sick and she's, trying to find a backup person to come for her.
Yeah.
So, there is risks, but there's also rewards in the different types of businesses. So
True. Very true. Very true.
Let's see. So you were going to share with us some of your tips. And the first one that I think talked about was all-inclusive venues.
Oh, yeah. So before we go, I did want to mention some Hill Country wedding planning tips. One of them being to choose an all-inclusive venue. That way you're not worried about if your family or your friends could book the hotel in time. You've got that room block with them, but also it takes care of everything. Your catering, your linens, your tables, your chairs, your venue. Some even offer services for your wedding rehearsal and also like the wedding day after brunch. So all-inclusive venues are awesome. Also because right now, like 3-day weddings are happening, and that's like the newest trend. And to have on-site lodging is the best, just to have everything concise and fun and everybody's together. One of the tips I do want to recommend is booking your room blocks well in advance. When you're out there in the Hill Country, a lot of things get booked up really fast because there's only so many of these vendors, of these room blocks, these hotels, of lodging. So I do recommend just kind of squaring that away really quickly. But also things like booking your rehearsal dinner, your rehearsal place too. A lot of times we're at the church and you can't have a rehearsal, or at the venue and they don't allow it. So having a place picked out to host your wedding ceremony rehearsal, but also the dinner as well, just keeps that into check. And then also that Hill Country wedding venues, they cover a lot of your details, those teeny tiny little details that you don't even think about when you're planning your wedding. Yeah. Do you want to kind of speak a little bit about that, about the how we cover almost everything that you'd need for your wedding, and if they don't, they have a recommendation for you.
Yeah. Well, so one thing I want to mention, I don't want anybody to be alarmed when they hear that a venue may not allow you to have your rehearsal there. First of all, you can usually find a park or some place that you can do it in to still have your rehearsal. But the reason that sometimes it may not be an option is that the venue is literally, some venues are on a very large scale of weddings a year. And so they're literally doing a wedding every night. And so you can't go there the day before to do your rehearsal because they're having a wedding that day. So that just, I don't want anybody to be not, I just want to make nobody panic, and also just be aware of that's why. But yeah, so I feel like in the Hill Country, it's not as much of the case of just a venue, right? And when I say just a venue, I mean, basically they just open the doors and say, here's your space, do with it what you please. And so in the Hill Country, you're more often not, you're almost always going to have tables and chairs. You're almost always going to have some kind of extra element, whether it be linens or coordination or decor or on-site catering. They're almost always going to have, and the lodging is a very popular add-on here in the Hill Country. So they're all of us are just going to offer something. Now with us, we offer pretty much all of those things that we mentioned. Because I was a coordinator before I did this, and I wanted to bring Stephanie in because she's in it now. I am here solely at the venue, so I don't get all the things. But when I was doing it, I didn't like having to be in and out. We did a chapel wedding where we had 30 minutes prior and 30 minutes after the wedding to get in and out. I did not want my couples to deal with that. I also loved hearing, I love my couples, right? And I love talking to them and hearing their stories. And it would just break my heart when you would see somebody say, oh my gosh, my cousin that I haven't seen in 8 years is coming. And they get to be like, hi, I'm so happy to see you. And they talk to them for like 5 minutes. And then they have to run and go do a million other things. And so that's one of the main reasons that we did on-site lodging, you know. And then we ended up adding things like linens and decor because we just felt like that was just one less thing. So, you know, a lot of venues here, they do try to alleviate some of the stressors, and some of that is just a stressor, like finding rentals can be more difficult if you don't have a relationship with them, you know. I know that, like, we were working on a nonprofit event and somebody with the nonprofit reached out to a rental company. They didn't hear back, and that may have just been that their thing went to their spam or whatever, because I've heard of that happening. I've had that happen with a couple who were, it's like, I reached out to your person and I didn't hear back, and I reached out to my person. I was like, hey, my bride needs you. Why are you not responding, right? And they're like, check your spam folder. So, you know, and sure enough, it was there. But, you know, but so if you don't have a relationship with them, trying to get some of these rental companies out in this way is tough. So a lot of times venues here really try to bring it all together for you as much as you can. And like we've talked about with packages, like nobody's there two are the same, and it's all going to be their strong suits, right? So we've been in the hospitality industry before we were in the wedding business. And so hotels is okay for us, but somebody who's never done that business, that wouldn't work for them. Somebody who's never done weddings in general, like there's so many new venues, they probably don't need to be buying your decor because they don't know what to buy. You don't know what's in. So, you know, just it's going to be everybody's strong suits in all markets, I think, of the wedding industry. But that is one of the things that we tried to do, was like, what can we put together to really provide the best service for our clients?
Yeah, right. And that just goes back to like our last point. What's included, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's included at your venue? What's included with your vendors? Sometimes I hear that, oh, I didn't know that the venue had easels for us to use. Something, maybe some swag or candle votives that we just have to purchase candles for, little things like that. It's really good to kind of ask those questions early on, especially with your vendors too. A lot of times I hear, oh, we got a DJ. But then I look at the contract and they only have a DJ for their reception. They didn't make sure that there's an extra setup for their, ceremony that's 5 minutes down the road, and they need mics, they need speakers, they need a plug for these things, and they just didn't factor that in. But yeah, it's good to know what's included and what's also not included.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And that's one of those things where contracts are why I feel like when I see a vague contract, I get really concerned. Because some people do that on purpose, unfortunately.
I bet. Yeah. Oh, I bet. Just so that they could get away with showing up whatever time they want and to deliver the kind of service that they feel that day. Right. So contracts help you as the client, but also it helps the professional just keep things professional.
Right.
So, yeah.
Like if you added something onto your contract at day one, right? Like I had a client who added on decorating services, because we provide decor here, but we don't decorate. So that's something that you need to be aware of. And sometimes I find like the bride knows that, but the bridesmaids don't realize that. They're like, oh, she said they got the decor, but the decorating is not. You know what I mean? So anyway, but when we had a client, you know, that very early on that they added that onto their contract, well, it's been 12 months. Well, before every wedding, I'm going to go back to that contract and make sure this is what was in their package when they signed and everything else. And so I'm going to make sure that that's there. If I didn't have a contract that told them that, then it would be just lost. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Contracts are meant to guide and help
I
and
feel like
protect.
we have said
Just on contracts. Oh, you there? Hello. Oh, you froze. All right, well, I guess we can just end the stream. We're really completely done with all of our points. So if you guys are reading or wedding planning in general, wedding coordination, design, let me know. You can find me at www.mysweetgardeniawedding.org. And I had such a great day with Sherry, just chatting. Hopefully we can get her back, but if not, thanks so much for having me.